Welcome to Let's Talk About It Sunday, an extension of KELA's weekday local talk show featuring a variety of subjects of local interest. This program was pre-recorded, so we're unable to take live calls on today's show. And now, let's talk about it.
Welcome to Let's Talk About It Sunday. I'm your host, Peter Abbarno, on AM1470 KELA and 104.3 KMNT, the Let's Talk About It Sunday show, where we bring you organizations, individuals that are in our communities doing amazing work. And there's one organization that's doing just amazing work, and that's the Fire Mountain Arts Council. And with me today, I have April, Fred, and Jessica here to talk about all the cool things that are happening. And really, one of the more important aspects of this organization is how they got started, why they got started, and the impact it has on so many people in communities. A lot of communities that are underserved. Now, communities like Morton, communities like in East Lewis County that love to have these organizations bring art and theater and youth programs. So we're going to talk a little bit about that on Let's Talk About It Sunday. And I am starting off with April because April has a ton of history about the Fire Mountain Arts Council. April, thanks for joining me today.
Okay. Thank you, Pete. Fire Mountain Arts Council grew out of a group of people involved in the summer musicals that were put on through Centralia College East, starting in 1986. So every summer for 4 years, and then every other summer for the next decade, until we had the opportunity to acquire the Roxy Theater, because we were doing these shows in the high school gym. So that's tough, to turn a high school gym into a theater.
It is. So starting in 86, you were putting on all these theater shows, and what kind of shows did you put on? Were they musicals or plays?
The first one was a review, but after that it was Broadway-type musicals, like Annie Get Your Gun, Oklahoma.
Paint Your Wagon.
You bet. So
you started in 86. When did you acquire the Roxy?
So the acquisition of the Roxy came in jumps and starts. Late in the 1990s, a group of us went over and looked at the Roxy, dreaming, and it was just awful. It was just a depressing, rundown place and an eyesore on Main Street, and it's like, we couldn't even imagine how we could make that into a effective theater. But then there were a couple of studies that were done. It was a revitalization plan funded by the Forest Service, and another Highway 12 plan put together by the National Park Service. And both Fred and I sat on some of those focus groups and kept bringing up the idea of theater. And there was a lot of interest in it. After those were published, and then this group of people that were involved in doing these musicals saying, we got to do it. We got to figure out how to do it. And so from there, the Arts Council was formed in early 2003. And by the end of 2003, we had purchased this horrible, dismal theater.
that you made into a great theater.
Yes,
right?
And then we had to work on the renovation plan.
Well, in April, how did you get involved? So before we started the show, when we were off air, you told me you're a math teacher, like my wife. So yes. How does a math teacher get involved with an arts council?
So I was a math teacher, but also the administrator at Centralia College East. And so as the administrator, I set up classes. And so the first class I got to set up in 86 was a play direction class, which I took, and so did Dee Morton, who ended up then directing Oklahoma the next summer, and I produced it. So I continued then being the producer of these summer musicals.
Oh, cool.
And then Fred ended up acting in all of them.
So Fred, thanks for joining us. You're an actor then.
Well, actor and director. I took my kids to audition for Oklahoma, just thinking, well, it'd be cool if they got into it. Next thing I know, I'm up there singing, "Oh, the farmer and the cowmen should be friends." You know, it's like I just got roped into it, and I really got hooked.
Yeah.
And so the whole idea of theater in our community really became something that all these people from everywhere, every walk of life in our community, every church, every belief, came together to produce this work of art every summer. And it became such a point of pride for our community that the support continued and continued and continued and to this day. And when we started the theater, it was I mean, buying the Roxy Theater, it was to help us have our own venue so that we could really do have a lot more freedom to do what we wanted.
Well, so what's your profession? I mean, how did you get involved? I mean, are you telling me you're an accountant who just found his voice in Oklahoma?
No, I'm not an accountant. I was a counselor for Centralia College for about 30 years, and I taught psychology and sociology. I never taught drama.
Well, psychology probably plays pretty well into the whole drama, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
So where'd you come up with, I mean, you were part of this from the beginning as well.
Yeah.
So where did you come up with the idea of the name Fire Mountain Art Council?
Wow, we had a hard time with that. We have a board member who's kind of grew up in this community, as you know, she was born here, that sort of thing. And we were throwing names around, and finally she came up with Fire Mountain Arts Council. That was Louise Fisher, who's our secretary until this day. She's been our secretary for since 2003.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool name. It's very catchy. I mean, it's really a neat name.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. We were having a hard time getting a name that would incorporate. We didn't want to be Morton Arts Council or East Louis County Arts Council. We wanted more colorful names.
yeah, and one that has more of a regional effect, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I think that's important as well. How many people are on your board? How big's your board?
Right now it's at 10.
10?
We've had as many as, 15, 17, something like that.
15.
What's your favorite, April, what's your favorite play so far, since you know them all?
It would have to be Fiddler on the Roof.
Okay. When was that in production?
1998.
Okay.
Yeah, so we did it at the high school.
Okay.
With Susan Carhart, who then was teaching drama at Onalaska High School. And it's just such a well-written play. And it was a great cast.
Yeah.
So that's probably my all-time favorite. And I got to play the ghost Frumacera. And so I got to scare babies in the audience.
Well, well, do you put that on your resume?
Oh, absolutely.
I scare babies in the audience. What about you, Fred? What's one of your favorite roles or plays that you've been part of?
Showboat. I played Andrew Carnes in Showboat. Not Andrew Carnes, Captain Andy. Excuse me. And Captain Andy ran this showboat, and he kind of was the center of the play. People came and went from him, and I'm not that great a singer, so it was great. I didn't have to sing a song. I just got people involved, and they started singing.
Yeah.
That was great.
Well, I think you did pretty well already.
You are listening to Let's Talk About It Sunday, an extension of KELA's weekday local talk show. Stay tuned. Let's Talk About It Sunday edition will return in a moment.
Okay, and now back to business.
Listen on the air and online.
KELA.
Let's talk about it. Good morning. You're listening to Let's Talk About It Sunday, an extension of KELA's weekday local talk show. This program was pre-recorded, so no live phone calls on today's show.
Well, if you're just tuning in to Let's Talk About It, AM1470 KELA or 104.3 KMNT, you're listening to the Let's Talk About It Sunday show. I'm your host, Peter Abbarno, with Fred, April, and Jessica with Fire Mountain Arts Council. And it brings me to Jessica, because we haven't spoken yet. So, Jessica, welcome to the show.
Hey. I'm Jessica Scoggin. I'm the president of the Fire Mountain Arts Council. And we moved in. I moved 5 of my 8 children in about almost 8 years ago. And we came to this area from Kennewick, from the Tri-Cities, and my husband works for the hospital, and so that was really cool that they have a hospital in this area. But then also they have this theater, which when we came here, we were like, what? Now, what can the kids do? You try to figure out there are some things that they couldn't do anymore, like they didn't have tennis and things like that we were used to. But we do love theater as a family. And so I grew up with a mother with this extensive, she's a seamstress. She had a costume collection. And so I came over with 72 boxes of costumes that I've been collecting over the years. And I'd actually run a theater camp up in Omak for a few years. So I had these costumes. So I had this this thing that I could help out the theater with. And I started out doing costumes with Louise Fisher and doing the children's plays. And then, that's just kind of how they get you, right? So it's just such an awesome program. And my kids, now I only have, one just graduated, so legally one left at home. But
is there an illegally at home?
No, I mean, you think like, who are you actually financially responsible for? But then you end up being responsible for them.
Right.
That was that parenting thing. Anyway, so it was just the perfect thing for our family to integrate themselves into the community in Morton. But the cool thing about the children's theater, I'm just going to jump into that a little bit. I direct the children's theater now. So after we had Vanessa Nixon Klein was there for a few years while I was there, and then she moved, and so they needed a director, and I'd always really wanted to try. I've been in plays for years. I love plays, but I wanted to try to be a director, so I volunteered. And that's the funny thing about the Fire Mountain Arts Council, or if you want to do something and you're willing and you're able, they let you do it. So
volunteer.
They volunteer.
Yep.
I do volunteer, and it's been awesome. Of course, I started with Mary Poppins, and halfway through our rehearsals, COVID hit, so we had to shut everything down, which was super sad. But then a year and a half later, we were able to finish it in the summer, like in 2 weeks. We used our summer camp and we finished Mary Poppins, and it was just an awesome show. And we started out with 72 kids.
Wow.
It was a huge amount. And it did drop down after COVID for that summer show to about 45. Still a huge. And I kind of keep vowing never to make it too big again, like the 72, but you just can't help yourself. And we have kids that come all over from Eatonville. We have kids from over in Napa Vine. We have kids that come from Packwood. And so they're participating from all over East Louis County and then beyond, because we have the kids that come from up north, and just for various reasons, I know in Eatonville they lost their director, and so anyway, we did Newsies, and we've done
great. That's a great one. That's
Yeah.
a great musical. My son loves that.
Yeah,
musical.
that was my dream one actually, and that was awesome. That was my favorite. But we did Elf. We did Elf, like Buddy the Elf.
Yep.
We did that one last Christmas, and then we just finished. Aladdin. Mm-hmm. With 57 kids in that production.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is a huge amount.
But you have theater in your blood. I mean, you have theater in your genes, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I've been doing it for a while. And but my kids, like I said, they had done other sports, and but I like my kids to be well-rounded. They have to, each of them have to pick a musical instrument, things like that. So they accuse me of knowing theater more than I know other things. But
okay.
I might call, when they go to do softball, I might call it, are you going to go to softball? Instead of play practice or whatever, I'll say. I get it mixed up every once in a
Do you
while.
say things like, are you going to go to fast pitch in the dirt? Or are you going to go to theater and we're going to sing?
Right.
That's how you
you
do it,
do. But and it's just, it was, like I said, it was a great opportunity for my kids, and the kids in the community. I also worked at the school for 5 years. I worked at the school district, and it really became my passion to get those kids in the school district to come, because Morton doesn't have a theater program. So Morton High School doesn't. Mossy Rock and White Pass do. But so we were able, but they all come and participate. We got homeschool kids that participate in the theater program.
Well, and for, my kids live in a household with no I would say no musical bone. I mean, my wife plays a little piano. I have nothing to do with musical instruments except a harmonica, which I love playing the harmonica, but it's music by numbers. My son reminds me of that. It's not real music, Dad. You can't read music. You play by numbers. But I remember one day, out of the blue, my son, who loves musicals, watched Annie.
Yeah.
And we had a family night, and he has fallen in love with music and theater. We watch everything now.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that, you just don't know what's going to spark interest in a student or a young kid because I would never have thought a musical would do that. I'm not into musicals. I mean, when April and Fred were talking about musicals and naming off characters, it went right over my head. I'm like, I don't think I've even seen Showboat. In Oklahoma, I heard it in the background when my daughter was watching it. But for them, it's so important. So talk a little bit about how it impacted you and how it impacts these kids, because you were involved when you were young.
Yeah, so I actually, when I was 3, I did something, just some little thing like a church play or something. But really in middle school was when I really got into theater. And I can remember, of course, middle school years are hard and you don't feel like you belong. And you find this theater group full of people that you might all feel like they don't belong. And you get with them. And all of a sudden you have this family, you know. And so I started out in middle school, and the plays they're not, I love Broadway musicals, obviously. They're the best. But usually in middle school, the scripts that they can afford are not the best music or whatever, but they like to try to teach a lesson or something. And so that, I remember this one was about like puberty and growing up and just some interesting things that the drama teacher had us all sing and talk about that we probably weren't as comfortable talking about, but whatever, it's a play. But it was just to be able to accomplish something and to feel proud of myself, and it helped, like those hard years, it really helped me feel like I was accomplishing something, like I could do amazing things, Yeah. And that really, we have our kids in this community. I remember sitting down with the athletic director at the school and finding out that not a lot of the kids did sports at the school. There was maybe a few of them participating throughout the year, but I think we figured out 150 kids in the junior high and the high school for Morton, at least, there was about 50 kids that were participating in athletics. And so that left a bunch of kids at home that didn't have anything to do. And so particularly, like, we have this one young man who he does lights now with the theater. And I know that when he had just first moved there, he didn't feel like he fit in there at school. And so I was approached by the principal at the time, and he's like, do you think he could do theater? And I'm like, well, I don't know. He doesn't seem like he wants to act. But what he really has loved is the technical part of the theater. And Fred could tell you, because Fred does lights with him, that he's just this amazing kid that has just taken off. And he's become like a really crucial part of our theater. So even if those kids aren't like, oh, I want to get on stage and sing and dance or say lines, there's all these other
things they can do,
opportunities for them to do. Yeah. So
Fred, talk a little bit about that. That's a really good point, is that there's so many aspects. I mean, you have done acting, but you've also done directing. There's a lot of roles for people like me who are not very talented who can still be part of theater. Talk about that.
Well, certainly there is the doing the lighting. The lighting is very complex. A theater, a play will often have like 30 to 40 light specials where you got to adjust the lights, and they all have to be programmed in. So what Jessica was talking about is we got a nice grant from the PUD and through TransAlta to upgrade our lighting to LED. Well, this is a whole different way of thinking about lighting with regards to wiring. But anyway, we had all these volunteers, and I said to this young man, don't help us install them. I've got plenty of volunteers. I want you to figure out how to get these things working. Well, within a half an hour, he was walking around with his phone turning lights on and off. I was like, this having somebody who is indigenous into the culture of the technical world is really helpful. And his self-esteem and personal growth just really happened great with him.
Yeah, and if you're just tuning in to Let's Talk About It, AM1470 KELA or 104.3 KMNT, you're listening to Let's Talk About It Sunday show, and my special guest today, Fire Mountain Arts Council. April, tell me about, what Fred was talking about wasn't around in 86. So
Correct.
Moving from the high school to the Roxy not only created some of the problems, right? Because it was like, all right, so how do we get this theater ready, but also opportunities to upgrade for the future.
Correct. Yes. In fact, the children's program actually started in 2003 at the same year we acquired the theater, but it started in the high school library. And we did Sound of Music in the high school gym in 2002, summer 2002. There were 42 kids that auditioned for the 6 roles. And it's like, holy cow, we need to be serving this part of the community. And so Lynn Olmos and Martha Sturgeon, teachers from Mossy Rock, started the children's program that next summer, which then continued. And as we were able to get into the theater in 2007 was probably the first time we had the children's program in the theater. But it's just, been able to grow and expand since then.
Yeah.
So the children's program has just been, it's just a key part of our mission.
Well, and it's important in areas that don't have as many things to do. They don't have as many of these opportunities. When you create a gem like this, it really opens doors for kids who may have thought there weren't any of those doors open to them.
Right.
Now they have one.
Yes, yeah. And, it's not just the kids, too. We have adults that volunteer to help, especially with the children's program, but volunteer to help with other parts of the program too, and they actually end up resume building. And in a way, Jessica's kind of an example of that, aren't you?
Well, for sure. Like we have a lot of people helping in our program, in the children's theater program. And I was a stay-at-home mom for 25 years and started, so I did go to the school for a little bit, but then I also, because of the things I was doing. It helped me build a resume. Now I have a job as the foundation director at the hospital, but because of the things that I had been learning to do concerning plays. And so we have one of our producers sometimes when you're a stay-at-home mom, your resume does get a little stagnant, right? And it's an awesome thing, but what happens is you might lose some skills or you need to develop some skills. And so we've got a lot of one of our producers went back and she's a teacher now. She got a job as a teacher. So there's this point at your life where, anyway, so I don't know I don't know if we want to get into that too much, but what the cool thing is that we've developed our skills in ways we never thought possible to be able to go on to do other things that were pretty cool.
Well, and we talk about all the time, whether it's this program or another, the need for more mentors in our community.
Yes.
And that there are so many skills that are untapped in the home.
Yes.
And you just said whether you're a stay-at-home parent or whether or not maybe you're a graduate, but you didn't leave Morton, you didn't go on to a career, you're staying kind of locally, but you want to do something else and you have this gift of mentorship you want to have. I mean, this is a great organization to be a part of that because you don't have to sing. I'm proof of that. You can help out in other ways, whether it be lighting or stagehands or maybe selling tickets or just promoting the organization.
Yeah. So it definitely developed everyone's. It develops all of our skills. It's really cool how the people helping out just have such a passion for it, and they just are able to intuitively figure these things out that there are strengths. And so that's what I like to tap in. That's my favorite thing, is to find something that someone wants to do to find their strengths. Kind of like our story with our boy who started doing the lighting kind of thing. So that's something else about our theater. April did the grant writing and things like that. She does awesome things. But there's something you need to know about our theater. So after they got this, they had this theater built. The one issue we've had is that it doesn't have. We have 3 buildings total. So there's the Tiller, and then there's the Roxy Theater, and then we have an art gallery next door. So it's not a full stage. So you have to be really very creative in how you get kids on and off stage and things like that. Over the years, they've done some interesting. So we actually had been working for a long time with having to go from the Tiller, and then they go through the back door to get onto the stage. So the kids, because we were just talking about this in the car, that the theater had some issues. Obviously, we had to try to figure out how to get around those. So we would build like this building thing in the back of the theater to help protect from the rain and everything when the kids are going back and forth. And everybody's been super creative. And we have this great Bruce. He's an awesome set builder, and we call it the shanty behind, where we could get back and forth to the theater. So speaking of skills, but so what we've been really working on, though, is to try to build out the theater to make it be a big enough theater. And so part of that process, or that grant that Fred was talking about, we've gotten the lighting, we've got a new HVAC system, but now recently we started getting the funds to be able to build back the back of the theater. So,
well, you want it to be safe too, right? Because you tapped into somebody's skill to build like a breezeway between, so that you wouldn't get wet when you're moving back and forth.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I probably just jumped the subject here, so I was just thinking about that. But so it was great when during Newsies we had a boy, though, who was in a wheelchair, and he wasn't able to do anything, but we made a little a tent for him kind of to be at behind the scenes. So what we've been trying to do is have a place for the kids to be able to have, or everyone that's in the play rather, as a green room, a place that's behind the theater that's right there attached to it to be able to get the kids or the people onto the stage. So that's something we've been working on with our
well, I mean, that's kind of a good segue, right? Because, one of the things that our listeners are going to know as we're wrapping up is, how can they help? Can they go to, I know your website is firemac.org. Mm-hmm. Can they donate to your nonprofit?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Of course.
Can they volunteer? And they can promote. I mean, and so that's one of the things that we want to do. We want to make sure we're promoting the things you're doing throughout the organization, whether you're talking about the Event Center, the Roxy, or the Gallery. We want to make sure that people know that they can donate and help support what your mission and what you're doing, because, it started in '86, but it's going to go on for a long, long time, and the community at large can invest in this to make it even more regional, to create opportunities for not just kids, but Jessica, you made a good point, not just kids, but even adults, stay-at-home moms, people with talents that we really want to tap into in those communities. So really pretty amazing. So we're wrapping up, but I really encourage people to go to firemac.org and support the Fire Mountain Arts Council. Jessica, Fred, April, thank you very much for coming. I really look forward to having you back on the show as we start doing specific events and promoting them, and looking forward to it. So thank you for coming.
Yeah. Oh, we do have Adam's Family. Adam's Family coming up this summer is our community with the college.
All right.
We'll be doing so. Please come and watch Adam's Family.
Come and learn more at firemac.org. Thanks for listening to Let's Talk About It Sunday. I'm your host, Peter Abbarno. Up next, Fox News and Fox News Sunday.